And as far as we mainly know and have been told, Christmas means Christ's Mass and is a celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ. But what if that isn't where Christmas began? What if there's a dark and ominous past to Christmas we were never told about? Now, although many of us are taught that Christmas simply sprang out of existence with the birth of Christ, this is wrong. There were many festive celebrations around the Christmas holidays that went on for thousands of years before this was even integrated, and it was known as something called Saturnalia. And Saturnalia was essentially an ancient holiday celebrated by the Romans that went on from December 17th, usually until December 23rd, and sometimes extended to the 25th. And the reason Saturnalia is so interesting is because it has a dark past that has been not only forgotten, but hidden from the masses when referring to Christmas for quite some time. And along these lines of founding Saturnalia, we have to take in religion, because religion was part of the state, was part of the government during Roman times, and the majority of Romans in these times were pagans. And this is how Roman mythology got so big. Pagans believe in polytheism, which is the belief of many gods that exist simultaneously. Over the coming week, during these celebrations, they would make this Lord of Misrule take part in what was going on with these festivities. They would feed them well, indulge them in foods, give them physical wants such as women, the people they wanted, different things that would indulge any human being. And then once this was done, at the end of the festival, these people were slaughtered. They were murdered as a tribute to the god Saturn. And this killing was done because it was believed in these times to expel the evil forces that surrounded the people of Rome. And this holiday wasn't a clean PG version of what we know as Christmas today. It was definitely R-rated. There was drunkenness all wild, people doing whatever drugs they could. They were pillaging the village, could not face charges for the entire days of the festival, had intercourse out of marriage. Many things went on at these times that weren't allowed during the regular year. This was essentially a time to let go, a Mardi Gras of the ancient world. And this holiday, while popular, would have most likely died out over time, but was instead incorporated into a new and rising religion at the time, known as Roman Catholicism. And this is what kind of started the translation of every understanding that we know through history of Saturnalia into what is now Christmas. This ranges from Christmas trees, which were of pagan origin. They always worshiped the forest, trees within the forest. They would bring them into their home, do sacred rituals around them, and worship them all the time, which slowly translated into a simple tree in the home that we all have during Christmas. A tradition which itself is not too bad until you refer it to another Christmas tradition, such as the mistletoe, which essentially represented a druid ritual where they would poison spears with mistletoes and sacrifice victims underneath a mistletoe. And slowly over generations was transformed into a more PG version of this, which nowadays we know as kissing under the mistletoe, something much nicer than a sacred ritual of sacrificing a human being. But again, we're not told this. We are hidden from this history because it is just too dark for us to understand or to know about. And if you're like me, you might be asking, why would the Roman Catholic Church do this? Why would any major religion incorporate such a crazy mess of a holiday into their dogma, into what they do on a yearly basis? And this is where the birth of Jesus Christ comes in. And this was done to convert religion, to convert pagans to Catholics. The Roman Catholic Church promised that if these pagans would convert to Roman Catholicism, that they could still effectively practice these rituals, these sacred things under the Roman Catholic law, and they would not be prosecuted, they would not go to hell, they would be all right. This was the basis for kind of turning Saturnalia into Christmas, and it was also done to implement the birth of Jesus Christ. There was no specific holiday at the time celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, and due to Saturnalia ranging from the 17th and ending so close to the 25th, which was at the time the predicted date of when Jesus Christ was born, they decided this festival, for being so popular, so rambunctious, and so active among these people, should be the one they choose to celebrate his birth. They could incorporate it into one. It's just something so negative, so barbaric. We try to ignore it, try to hide it, try to push it away. But it is the foundings for Christmas, and we can't ignore it. We must understand both sides. Again, even if you're not religious, it's still great to see just how much we kind of evolved through time on a mental scale to take such a crazy holiday and make it a family organized event based on community and love.
Winter solstice a couple of days later was the shortest day of the year, and the pagans had something called Saturnalia. And it was a time of lawlessness because all the laws were suspended, and people, a bunch of singers actually wandered the streets naked singing. And then they had orgies, sexual orgies. It was a mass thing. Well, when the Catholic Church came along in Italy, the Romans and others didn't want to give up their holidays, so they said, okay, we'll Christianize it. And so they said, okay, we'll say the birth of Jesus was the 25th of December. But to say it's the 25th, shepherds were out abiding in the field. It gets a little cold at night. I mean, were they out there in the middle of winter? You know, I don't know. I've been out there on the shepherd's field on Christmas Eve. It's very nice. But it's cold. All this business about mistletoe, pagan. Christmas trees, pagan. Giving out gifts, pagan. Every bit of it is pagan. Every single bit of it is pagan. We've Christianized it all.
Now, a lot of people don't know this, but in this country, for a while, Christmas was actually illegal because they knew the origins, they knew where this stuff came from, and they knew that it was not holy. And so a lot of those original Protestants that came here, they did not do it for a long time until more people started coming over and it started getting mixed in and meshed in again and people started celebrating it. That was something in very recent history that started being done again. There was this lady called Semiramis. Some people would say that she is the same chick that is referred to in the Bible as the Queen of Heaven. Semiramis, and we have Nimrod, and you can see the lineage of where Nimrod came from through Noah's sons and all that. You can check that out in the scripture. So all the meanwhile, she has people worshiping her, and she has them worshiping the dead Nimrod, who she now said has been reincarnated as the sun god and is to be worshipped as the sun god. Some of these gods and goddesses had favorite evergreens and furs and garlands and things like that that they wanted given to them, to pay homage to them. So people would bring these evergreens and these garlands and these trees into their house, and they would put them places, and they would decorate the tree, and they would deck it out, and they would do all of these things unto the sun god, waiting for this great moment of this time of the year when that sun is reborn and the days begin to get longer again. We have the pagans with their different traditions and things that they're doing unto their gods that they have carried down through whatever tradition and language that whatever pipe that came through, all the way back from the whole sun god Semiramis Nimrod thing. At this time, people who were following the way were being told, you can no longer do these Sabbaths, you can no longer do these festivals and feasts. We need to have a one ecumenical combined way we do things. The day we worship, when we worship, who we worship, all of these things. We need to bring this whole thing together. We need to make this whole thing comfortable for all of these pagan people so that they can get on board with what we are trying to do, because we're trying to take over here, people. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take their festivals and feasts that they're doing unto their gods. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna mush it with this Jesus thing. And as time goes on, people will just get more used to the way things are. That's why in a lot of churches, you will see images of him with what they call a halo around the back of his head. That is in reference to sun god worship. Where did something like Christmas trees come from? It's not in the Bible. We don't see it in the Bible. There's a lot of things we don't see Christmas in the Bible. We don't see Messiah celebrating his birthday. We don't see the disciples celebrating it. And even the stories that were told about Christmas, like with the wise men, they didn't show up to bring gifts to him until he was a little bit more grown up. So there's a lot of things that we have been told and we have been taught that just simply aren't true or aren't in the scripture. We can't find anywhere where it was a feast or a festival that he asked us to do unto Yeshua. Stuff like Santa, and I know a lot of believers don't do the Santa thing, but the Saint Nick story is more of a modern thing. You have to take that all the way back, and I encourage you to look into the origins of that. But you have some guy, you're lying to your kids about it, you're telling them he's all-knowing, all-seeing, and omnipresent, and once a year he sneaks into your house and leaves presents.